Welcome to Breaking Ground. I'm so excited and honored today to have Erica Buckley, partner at Nixon Peabody. You're head of their co-op and condo division. You're also the former head of the Real Estate Finance Bureau for the state of New York. We're here today with Robin Schneiderman, Senior Vice President, Managing Director for Brown Harris Siemens Development Marketing, to talk about a topic that I bet 99% of you are not unaware of, which is recently the state of New York, with Erica's assistance, created an amendment to the 2019 rent laws with the Affordable Housing Retention Act. And this act potentially creates a tremendous opportunity for both tenants and landlords to attack a problem that 421A created that they didn't know they were creating in the beginning. And the 2019 law change really put a kink in the armor to, because it took away an ability for developers to convert buildings in the future that wasn't anticipated when they wrote the law, correct?
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair to say.
So tell us a lot, not just a little bit, about the change in the law, how it came about, your participation in that, and then Robin, yourself, and I will have a great discussion about all of the aspects of it and how both tenants, landlords, and potential owners in the future can take advantage of this opportunity.
Sure. So what we've got is called the Affordable Housing Retention Act, and it's a new standalone section of the general business law. And the general business law is the section of the law that regulates the offer and sale of real estate securities. And there's always been a separate section that governs the conversion of rental buildings to co-ops or condos. And as you noted, in 2019, that law was drastically changed. There were two things that were changed that are of relevance here. The first change was that the threshold you need to declare an offering plan effective was revised. Prior to 2019, you only needed to sell 15% of the units to either tenants or bona fide purchasers to declare a plan effective. And the 2019 change raised that up to 51%. And it's also 51% of tenants.
Right.
So no outside buyers.
No outsiders.
Yes. But the other change that took place is that the statute was amended to require that all units be offered for sale. That was not previously in the statute. So prior to 2019, you could have owners of mixed income buildings that wanted to just offer the market rate units for sale. They could make an offering to just the market rate tenants and set aside the affordable units as ongoing affordable housing. There was actually a policy drafted in 2014 led by, probably know I was there at the time.
Yes, you were.
And it was a policy that was, again, spearheaded by the AG and all of the city and state housing agencies. And the idea was, if there were mixed income buildings that, either had affordable units because of 421A or because of low-income housing tax credits, owners could convert the market rate units in exchange for agreeing to extend the affordability of the current affordable. That policy disappeared in 2019 because of the requirement that you have to offer all units for sale.
Right. So when that disappeared, I assume there was a lot of conversation at that time about why are we taking this away?
Yeah.
Not to belabor the point, but what was the thought about taking it away and then readdressing it later?
Right. So, look, what I like to say is the big ugly, the big changes to the rent laws and the Martin Act in 2019 became public on a Wednesday and signed by the governor on a Friday. This change to the Martin Act was put into the bill on a Wednesday and became law on a Friday. So there just wasn't really a lot of dialogue. And if we look through the legislative history, we see like a mention of now if a rent-regulated rental building converts to co-op or condo, the tenants are going to drive the process. Like that's all we have. So probably nobody was thinking about this, esoteric policy that was passed in 2014, and the emphasis was probably on rent-regulated buildings, since, as we know, the Housing Stability Tenant Protection Act was really an overhaul of the rent regulation laws.
Right.
So
okay, so this this part of the original bill in 2014 was a little bit of a casualty of the changes that came in 2019.
Yes.
So tell us now, 5-6 years later,
Yeah.
how did it come up that, hey, we need to fix this?
Yes.
And what was the impetus to fix it, and what's the benefit to the consumer, the landlord?
Yep, exactly. So I will say that, there were a key group of landlords that really pushed for the 2014 policy. And they obviously saw the problem that we have today, which is you've got these buildings that have affordable housing and the units are expiring. So those same owners, had asked me to reach out to the AG in 2019 to talk about, waiver. Because one thing the 2019 statute has is a provision that says the Attorney General may waive any requirement if it's not necessary to carry out the intent of the law. However, the AG was like, we don't believe that waiver can be used for, taking units out of the offering or reducing the 51% to 15%. And they said, if this is something that landlords really want, because they don't want to see their affordable housing disappear, they should go back to the legislature. So what we did was we started with a lawmaker that we thought would be friendly, who really understands homeownership and is a big supporter of homeownership and affordable housing, and that would be Assemblymember Harvey Epstein. So we started talking with him. And it was easy to talk to him because he gets it. Like I said, he's a shareholder in a co-op. He's done lots of work over the years with affordable homeownership. So when we explained to him the issue and the problem, he was really amenable to sponsoring a bill.
Got it.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what is the bill? What does it do? And which buildings qualify? And I know, Robin, you've been speaking recently. You actually brought this to my attention when you saw the change in the law, and you brought up and reached out immediately to Erica to say, hey, I think there's an opportunity here to consult with developers and help them. What opportunity did you see? And then I'd love Erica to tell us about how does this program work, which buildings qualify, and then how landlords, who were usually the developer of the building, can benefit from it and how we can help them.
Yeah, I mean, we realized back in 2019, I remember when some of our clients rushed to the AG's office, right? Literally on June 30th, 2019, before the plan sunsetted, just to get in. Our team worked on 393 West End Avenue. Steve, you remember when it was we got it in just in time.
Hours before.
Yeah, exactly. There were a few that made it.
Yes. And it's interesting because, condo conversion was a big part of our business for years, right? And from my point of view, this comes at an interesting time because, as everybody knows, home ownership is becoming more challenging in New York City, especially for an affordable scenario and market rate. Our inventory levels are lower than they've been in a long time. And then from a lot of our clients that are landlords, this is always, when you underwrite a deal, it's one is as a market rate rental with an affordable component, but the other idea is maybe one day you want to convert to condominium. So when this news came, I read Erica's article. I forget where it was published. And it was a light bulb that went off in my head immediately.
Yeah.
It was not only a business development opportunity, but I believe that there are some landlords out there where interest rates have moved so much from, call it 3% to as high as over 6% now, and they may have refinanced at a time or need to refinance now. And with the tax abatement expiring, it becomes challenging to hold on to some of these buildings. So, I started to do a tremendous amount of research, and Erica will now eloquently explain the different bullet points of who qualifies, how, and why. And I think that's the important part of this presentation, or podcast, I should say, is to lend that to others, because I know one has to be minimum of 100 units.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
But why don't you maybe give us a few of those other bullet points, and then maybe we could talk about opportunities.
Yeah, sure.
And before we do that, we're going to take a brief break, and we'll be right back.
I'm Brian Scott Cohen, one of the top loan originators in the country, and the #1 mortgage originator at Guaranteed Rate Infinity. Guaranteed Rate Infinity arguably has the most advanced tech in the industry. Our completely digital loan process makes it easy and efficient for homeowners, from a 15-minute pre-approval to the digital application and through closing. My team and I would love to help you get into the home of your dreams.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business, and it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
You're in the hot seat now.
Okay.
This is a very intricate bill.
Yes.
And there are a lot of moving parts. Tell us how this works, what the different tranches of opportunities are, where the tax credits and how does a building qualify?
Yep.
And then how does a landlord go about entering the process? And then, Robin, we're going to speak more about, obviously, the opportunities here for tenants to buy their apartments and what this might mean also to landlords that, as you said earlier, have loans that are coming due or are looking at future expenses that may exceed what their pro forma can afford.
Okay. So I'll go over the Affordable Housing Retention Act, but let me start by saying this is not a one size fits all.
Right.
This is not meant to undo the changes in 2019.
Right.
This is a very particular tool.
Right.
And if we had to estimate how many buildings we think might be a good candidate over a 5-year period, we're estimating that there's possibly 100 buildings with 30,000 units that could potentially take advantage of this.
That's a significant amount of
Significant,
property.
but reasonable.
Reasonable.
Significant.
Yes.
And yeah. So in other
Yes.
words, there aren't going to be thousands of preservation plans submitted. So
Right.
so what is it? Okay. So and again, what we ended up with was very carefully negotiated and was meant to almost, I would consider it a pilot. So what's the pilot? First and foremost, as you noted, the building has to have 100 or more residential units. It has to have been built after 1996, and it has to have some type of affordable housing that is at risk of loss or could be expanded.
Right. So I think that's a really important point, too, that a lot of these affordable units would have gone off the affordable roll. So what this is doing
Yes.
is it's preserving affordable housing,
Yes.
which people need to understand, because in the past, these tax abatement programs have, by some legislatures, been kind of misinterpreted. And I think the public thinks that opportunities are being taken away and given to the wealthy people, where they were really creating opportunities for people. But now this is really important because it's preserving and potentially adding more affordable housing.
Absolutely. And so, and also what we need to keep in mind is, of the buildings we're talking about, if you were to take their regulatory agreement, those units contractually will at some point go market. So you're exactly right. This is a tool to try to recapture those units and make sure that they're permanently affordable. So again, 100.
And that would
units.
happen after the expiration of particular building's tax abatement.
Well,
And leases.
yes,
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And one part of it for me that was tricky was, some of the 428 programs were different between
Yes.
96, I think, went to about 2008, and then
Yes.
it changed from 2008 to
Yes.
2021. I forget what the exact year is.
Yes. Yeah, there's different iterations for 421A. But let's go
So
through
go
the
for it. Yep.
typical.
So 100 units.
Yeah, 100 units or more, built after 1996, and affordable units. So the typical buildings are, they have low-income housing tax credits. They received 421A. They received bond financing, which includes Liberty Bond, which are those deals that are out there where 5% of the units are affordable and everybody's trying to figure out what to do with those. And then also inclusionary housing buildings. And there are quite a few buildings where there's inclusionary and 421A, and they would be eligible. And then there's also a provision in the law that says, or The buildings have affordable units as a result of a local, state, or federal law, which obviously gives the agencies some wiggle room to interpret that, to apply a little bit more broadly, so maybe in ways that we're not even currently thinking about. So how it would work is, again, if you have a building that has units that would otherwise expire, so think of the 421A or the low-income housing tax credits, all the owner would need to do is agree to preserve those existing units as permanently affordable to be able to convert the market rate units at the 15%.
Okay.
And there's obviously a lot of other criteria, but I'll just go through the different options. If your building is either a Liberty Bond deal or an inclusionary housing deal, you have to increase the threshold. So for the Liberty Bond deals, which as I understand it, most of those have 5% of the units set aside, the law says if you're a Liberty Bond deal, you've got to set aside at least 20% of the units as permanently affordable to be able to convert under this provision of law. And then if you have an inclusionary housing project, you have to bring the number of units up to 30%. So that's sort of the universe.
Okay.
And there are, as you said, lots of other things you have to do, but that's just so that like everybody understands the types of buildings.
Right.
Also of important because, I've had people ask me about this. Well, what about a rent stabilized building that was built pre-74? Hard no. What about a building that's a Mitchell-Lama? Hard no. Mm-hmm. What about a redevelopment company? Also a hard no. None of those buildings are meant to fit into this. The law expressly says that they are not eligible. And that was something that the legislature really, really wanted.
Right, because that would really undo almost everything that they did in 2019.
Yeah, and I think those types of affordable housing just have a very special place in the hearts of our lawmakers.
Right.
And they just, this is really meant for the types of buildings I just said,
Right.
not any other types.
Right.
And I think it's important to detail, let's just say your tax abatement expires 10 more years from now. You can still commence this process now while the building, right,
Yes.
has tenants in it.
Yes.
And because some of those units, those tenants are obviously subject to rent stabilization, even the market rate component, but a market rate person has a rent stabilized apartment can leave, right?
Yes.
So, and then you can start that process of getting to your 15% if you choose.
Yes. So that's a really important point. And I'm sure people have asked you and they've asked me, how close to the expiration do you have to be in order to take advantage of this? So the law does not have a clear line. So you could have 2 years left on your 421A, 3, 4, 5, or 10. As the statute is written, it's very broad. Another thing to note that's interesting is that the law also says buildings where there was an affordability requirement, but those restrictions expired, but the owner continued to operate the building as if it was still affordable, they are eligible as well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So we obviously know that buildings were built before or the exemption may be for a shorter period of time. So there could be buildings that want to take advantage of this, but their restrictions have expired. If the owner has continued to operate the property as affordable for those units, they could still take advantage.
Do you have to do any kind of red herring?
Okay, so let's talk about the process. Yeah. Okay. The answer is yes. Okay. But the good news is that when you do a red herring under the other section of the law that governs all other types of conversions, the AG has 4 to 6 months before they have to comment. Here, they have to comment after 30 days.
Oh,
So
that's
this
terrific.
is-
So it's a more normal process.
It's a much more normal, expedited process. So.
That's tremendous. And then would the tenants still have the same period to review the red herring as they did in a previous occupied conversion?
So how it will work is they will get the red herring at the same time it's submitted to the AG, but the AG review process kicks in much sooner. So they will, have an opportunity to comment, as some tenants have historically done.
Right.
But that process is going to start much sooner, and
Got
that's again, like we all have been a part of conversions that have lingered on for years, and that's just not helpful for anyone.
And I think a lot of people forget, but this is how conversions were done years ago.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
This is
Totally.
It's new. It's back. Right.
Yes.
But
Right.
this was historically how it was done.
Right.
Exactly.
So what happens to those units that now become permanently affordable?
Okay. So do you want me to cover the process and then we'll get to that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All right. So let's say I'm a landlord and I have a great 80-20 building and I don't want to see my affordable units expire. I want to continue to operate them as affordable because I'm mission driven and that's just not something I think is good for the city.
And there are a lot of mission-driven
are.
developers out there who
There
are
are.
very committed to affordable housing.
Yes.
It's part of their charter, basically.
Correct.
And they don't. It's important for them to maintain that.
Yes. Even if that's hard for some people to believe, that is
You mean they're not going to make tons of money
Yes.
on those units? No, they actually have a different outlook on housing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if I'm one of those landlords, the first thing I need to do is I need to start thinking about getting that letter of support from the supervising agency. So for example, if I have a low-income housing tax credit building and my supervising agency is the state, I've got to start reaching out to the state and saying to them, hey, I want to do a preservation plan. I want to convert the market rate units in my building, and I'm going to give to the state permanently affordable units with no subsidy. You don't have to worry about coming up with $850,000 per unit to get these units. All I need to do is, work with you and get that letter of support. Now, obviously, that I've just made it sound very simple, but in coming up with the letter of support, the other big thing that the landlord needs to do is choose their not-for-profit partner, because that's a huge aspect of this. And this was something that, again, was very important to the lawmakers that sponsored this bill. And we talked about Harvey Epstein on the Assembly, and then we have Senator Cordell Clear, who sponsored it in the Senate. She's wonderful. She's got a lot of 421A buildings in her district, and she wants to see those affordable units stay.
Sure.
So if I'm a landlord, I've got to decide who is my not-for-profit partner, because I'm essentially going to transfer those affordable units to a not-for-profit. I'm not keeping them.
Okay.
I am transferring them to a not-for-profit.
Got it. And then that not-for-profit then works with the state to create some type of new program to extend the affordability. How does that work?
Yeah. So the way it's envisioned under the law is, again, the not-for-profit is going to get the units for probably a very nominal sum, if any sum at all. And so right then and there, that is such a huge savings. Because again, I'm not sure everyone understands and appreciates that it's now costing like $850,000 on average to build a new affordable housing unit in New York. It's so expensive. So think about that from like a subsidy perspective. The city and state not having to come up with that money.
That's huge.
Yes, exactly. But yes, so the not-for-profit is going to take title. They obviously need to think about what kind of tax exemption or abatement they may need to cover the real estate taxes. Options that are available just straight out of the gate. We assume that the not-for-profit owner will be a not-for-profit HDFC, a housing development fund company. So they would be eligible for an Article 11 tax exemption, which is zero real estate taxes up to 40 years. That's what the law permits.
And that would only be on those affordable units.
Only those affordable
Right. I want everyone to
units.
understand that. It's only on those affordable units.
Correct.
So does that mean that the other 70% has to pick up the real estate taxes if the building is converted on those 30%, meaning?
Or would there be like a 30%, not dollar for dollar, but basically an abatement so that the 70%, let's say, market rate that end up buying or end up becoming condominiums, are they picking up the tax burden or are they paying their own tax burden?
So if we were to structure it the way we're talking about right now, the not-for-profit would get a tax exemption for those units.
So then the buyers, the other owners aren't really picking up
Correct.
extra expenses on that. They may be picking up extra expenses on their common charges to help carry the building, but not on their real estate taxes.
That is what I think is envisioned.
Right, okay.
So or at least if you talk to the biggest not-for-profit advocate of this bill was Habitat for Humanity.
Makes sense.
And so if you ask them, they would tell you, we envision getting an Article 11 exemption to meet any tax burden that they may have.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. But obviously there are other things they have to think about, and you're sort of, edging into that territory, which is how much is it going to cost the not-for-profit to operate these?
Right.
So it is absolutely the case that the law envisions utilizing special allocations so that if there is an operating shortfall, if the affordable units can't pay their common charges with the rents that the tenants are paying, the market rate unit owners could be assessed more to cover those costs.
Sure.
This is not a new concept. I'm here to tell everybody that we didn't make this up.
No.
This is something that's been in the Condominium Act for quite some time.
Right.
There are a lot of new construction condos where the developers took advantage of inclusionary housing, where the market rate owners may have to pay more towards helping the owner of the affordable units. So that same concept is a part of this as well.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, though. It does.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. So the not-for-profit has to think about how they're going to, meet their first year of operations budget. They also have to think about how the condominium board is going to be structured so that they have a voice.
Right.
And last but not least, there's so many things.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say we could start talking about the reserve fund, which I think is a very important component.
Let's definitely get into that in a moment. One thing that came to mind while I was thinking about our time together today is, you see, or we've seen a lot of articles in the last number of years about a lot of these HDFC buildings and a lot of the city NYCHA housing being in poor disrepair.
Yeah.
Related is now completely rebuilding the Chelsea affordable or housing developments. This to me seems like a great solution because if you're going to convert these buildings, then they are going to be maintained. Yes. And they are going to be updated and they are going to be properly taken care of. So that burden also comes off of, the state to help subsidize, the city to help subsidize, and it provides better quality housing for people in the future that need that affordable housing.
Yes, 100%.
So that seems like a win-win.
Totally.
Yeah.
So again, if we look at the universe of buildings that we're talking about that could be eligible over that 5-year period, almost all of these buildings are in very nice areas. And these buildings are very luxury because, again, they're mixed income buildings where 80% of the tenants are paying $15,000 a month or more. We, even looked at a profile where tenants were paying up to $40,000 a month. So, yes, these buildings are extremely, extremely nice. Yeah. But as part of the conversion, one of the things that the Affordable Housing Retention Act also included was a new section to the real property law to create a very specific reserve fund for conversions that these types of conversions. So similar to our typical conversions, we've got a new section of law that mirrors Local Law 70. So a sponsor that's converting the market rate portion of the building has to set up that 3% reserve. Right. So 3% of the sales. There's some deviations we don't have to go into.
Right.
That's for upkeep and repair of major capital components.
Future capital improvements.
Exactly. But also, the sponsor has to set up an additional reserve, which would be 0.5% of the offering. And that reserve is for the maintenance and upkeep and repair of the affordable units.
I love it. That's great. That's exactly what I was going for earlier. Absolutely.
Exactly. And so that money can be used for new kitchens, bath, appliances, whatever, painting whatever may be necessary, which, obviously, as you know, I do a lot of affordable housing work as well as market rate. And when we talk about permanently affordable housing, we sometimes lose sight of how are we going to maintain it forever, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is one of the things that's so great about this bill. These buildings are rock solid. They're starting off with an advantage. The building itself will have a reserve to take care of, the boiler, the roof, the major ticket items, and the not-for-profit owner is going to get this reserve to help meet just everyday maintenance and repair that oftentimes falls through the cracks. And we don't know where else to get that money from on a lot of these permanently affordable projects.
Right. Now, in the past, when a developer was converting a building and they had to set up this 3% reserve, 2% of that reserve had to remain with the building, but the developer was able to use 1% of that reserve for improvements that they were making for basically the conversion.
Yes.
Is that something that's still maintained, or is that gone?
No, the credit, I mean, really, the section of law, like if you were to take it and look at it side by side to Local Law 70, it looks really
It looks very
identical.
similar, yeah.
The only difference is that there's this new section for
Right.
the affordable units. So
Yeah.
you can still take the credit still available. And also, with Local Law 70, that is enforced by HPD, and that's not the case here. So HPD is not enforcing this new section of the law.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. We're going to take one more break. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Evan Greenberg with Langdon Title. I specialize in title insurance across New York, helping real estate attorneys, agents, and brokers close with confidence. I solve problems fast and keep your deals moving. Contact me anytime.
Ultimate Diamond is New York City's most established family-owned jeweler. With over 65 years of experience, Ultimate is renowned for its exceptional, custom-crafted diamond jewelry, its bespoke engagement ring designs, and its ability to source rare, distinguished timepieces. Ultimate has built a legacy of timeless craftsmanship and discretion, making it a trusted name among those who value refined luxury. Learn more at ultimatediamond.com.
All right, and we're back. So, Robin, I know you have a couple of questions about this as you're starting to talk to people about it, and people are calling you about it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess first and foremost, can we do this yet?
That's such a great question. So the actual effective date is November 5th.
Okay.
So as of November 5th, this will be effective. So, which means we should start planning now.
As always,
Yes.
we're always trying to build our pipeline, right?
Absolutely.
So you have to, think about these things now.
Absolutely.
And so you also mentioned that there's an opportunity for the affordable tenants to buy their apartments as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
How would that work?
Okay, this is one of the more exciting aspects of the bill that I really like because, TOPA has become a term that we're hearing all over the place, the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, which, again, we could have a separate podcast to talk about that state law.
Let's do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to. So how it would work, again, as we talked about, I'm the landlord. I've got to choose a qualified not-for-profit, such as a Habitat for Humanity NYC. Within a year of the condominium being consummated, the not-for-profit has to take title. And then that not-for-profit can work with their tenants to see if they would like to become homeowners.
Okay.
And so what that looks like for those tenants is they could become shareholders in a limited equity co-op.
So you would actually have two entities within the building. You'd have the market rate condominium.
Yes.
But then the affordable owners could form an affordable co-op within that.
Yes. And again, can't take credit for this being my idea. There are buildings out there that have this structure. Again, technically how it works, as I think you both know, let's say the building has 20 affordable units. Those affordable units would be in one condominium unit. If the tenants want to become homeowners, they would do a special plan to become shareholders in an HDFC co-op. And then that condominium unit would be transferred to that HDFC co-op entity. And then they would totally own, operate, and control that entity. And then they would still continue to have a seat on the condominium board because obviously they are going to continue to be a part of the condo because their real property is a part of the condo.
Right.
Yeah.
And how do we know yet how the prices would be set for those units? Or?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, we don't have like a price schedule,
Right.
But what the law says is that the shares have to be affordable to persons and family of low income. And it cites to this section of the private housing finance law that has generally been interpreted to be about 120% of the area median income.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's, we find that to be sort of a sweet spot for affordable home ownership. And so that's what the AMI would be. And they also have to be operated as affordable home ownership in perpetuity.
Right.
So there would be no opportunity to go private. They would just be permanent, a permanently affordable housing co-op.
Right.
Do we expect this to last for a certain period of time? Meaning, like the bill goes into effect
Yeah.
November 5th. Is it a 5-year term, or is
Yeah.
there, or is it just open ended for now?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's going to be effective for 6 years. And again, remember, before 2019, the Martin Act used to sunset every 6 years. So we could take a look at it and evaluate it and see how is it doing, what needs to be tweaked. So with this bill, that I believe was the thinking. This is a pilot. Let's see how it goes. In 6 years, we can evaluate how many projects have converted. Have they been successful? What has worked? What hasn't? And then at that point, hopefully the legislature will make any adjustments, hopefully expanding it.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Robin, you and I were talking about why is this needed? How important is this? And we were talking about, a lot of these buildings that have received a 421A tax abatement really only were possible because they were receiving this abatement. So talk to us a little bit about how you look at this, and how when you're talking to landlords, developers of those buildings, what are their concerns? They're seeing that 421A sunset, costs are going up. Do all these buildings, do many of them make sense as market rate, or is this a real opportunity for them to kind of dodge a bullet and also provide additional affordable housing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can tell right now that a lot of the abatements that are currently about to expire, I've personally started to get some phone calls and even gotten ahead of it in terms of starting to really dig into this and understand how this process works. And I can tell you firsthand, most of the phone calls that I've made, because I've put together a list of I think somewhere around 100 buildings that could qualify. And I would tell you that at least 1 out of 4 people that I've been talking to are open to the idea and starting to consider it based upon what you're saying in terms of the abatement expiring and what to do. And I think really at the end of the day, like Erica said, is maintaining this affordable component becomes the challenging part from an underwriting perspective, just to be honest about it. But that depending upon when the building was built, right, and how it's performing on a rental basis right now is really the silver lining.
Right. And real estate taxes, unfortunately, in the city continue to go up. So the problem for the landlord continues to grow, where their expenses are going up, but their income doesn't always go up exponentially to their expenses.
Yeah, and a lot of people that did deals, in the last call it 5 or even 10 years, given where interest rates are, really, I think is the one part of it that's moving the needle the most. There's a lot of people out there that own buildings that were developed under the 421A program that simply are just holding on right now.
Yeah.
They're not selling, right, because they don't think they can make a profit, and they're just operating their buildings, waiting for that moment for cap rates to finally go down. I mean, cap rates are probably at 5 or even 6% right now.
Right.
Historically, they were they could have been as low as 4 cap, right? So now this, I think, will create an opportunity for some. It obviously also depends upon who their financial partners are and what their goals are,
Right.
Yes.
right? So there's all different kinds of pieces to the puzzle, as we know. But I do think that we will start to see some of these come to fruition in the near future.
Yeah, and as their mortgages come due, if they're looking to refinance now, where they may have financed at, as you said, like low sub 5% interest rates, and now in multifamily they're looking at probably in excess of 7%. That's a big difference, right?
Correct.
So they're really looking for an opportunity to monetize their asset, maintain the affordability, as we mentioned. A lot of these developers who develop affordable housing have a mandate to maintain affordable housing, and they have done well for themselves, but they also realize that giving back is a big part of their ethos, right? So,
And
I
also, from a strategic standpoint of developers also, if you look at, and we've talked about this on our prior podcasts about supply and demand in Manhattan, Brooklyn, in terms of new development condos, is finally I think it's at a 10-year low, being under 4,000 units in Manhattan. So this is really an opportunity for somebody to not wait to buy a piece of land, right? Not wait
Absolutely.
12 months to design a building and 2 to 3 years to build a building. You can instantly bring some new product to the market. I always will remember when Ben Shaul at Magnum bought the Post Properties portfolio. And he brought 4 buildings to the market in like 6 months, and that was an interesting time when some product was needed, and they were relatively successful.
Yeah, and within the scope of New York City real estate, reasonably priced, because it was a slightly older product, but still modern enough to have modern, HVAC systems and electrical systems and elevators and windows, but they weren't $2,000 plus a square foot. They were more in the teens a square foot.
So, and that's probably where most of these will fall. And remember also, they can also go in and do some renovations to these units to help effectuate the business plan. And we all continue to hear on a regular basis, for whatever reason, nobody really wants to do work in New York City. That's what all the resale brokers tell us, right? Nobody wants to renovate co-ops and go through those lengthy approvals. So this is a quick sort of fix for potential home ownership and also for our clients.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I see this as an opportunity for people that did not think they could afford to buy an apartment in Manhattan to buy something at a reasonable price. Yes, maybe it's a little dated, but it's still, as I said, is still modern enough to meet most people's needs. And yes, they could always renovate them in the future. So Erica, you parting shot. In closing, what would you say about this legislation? And a lot of developers and investors watch this podcast. How do they contact you? You are the expert in this, so we want to make sure that everyone gets in touch.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me and talking about this. This is one of my favorite topics. Obviously, look me up. If you type my name in Google, my website will come up. Again, partner at Nixon Peabody. I run our co-op condo practice, and I'm ready to do these deals. I guess one thing I will say is, and we talked about this, Habitat had done a survey of tenants, and to ask them, if you had an opportunity to buy your apartment, would you want to? 86% of tenants in New York are saying if they had an opportunity to buy their home, they would. That's huge. Wow. At the same time, even the New York City Comptroller is issuing a report on home ownership that it's become out of reach for many. The prices are high. And even that report says it's because of dearth of inventory. So this is a great opportunity to put more inventory in the marketplace, help tenants become owners, preserve affordable housing. Yes, of course, it's going to cost something, but that is I'm sorry, we're heading in that direction anyway. So I think this is a great tool. I hope owners will look into it because we need some wins. We need some successful conversions. This is a great tool. A lot of people put a lot of time and energy supporting it. So any owners that want to look into it and talk about it, give me a call, please.
Oh, absolutely. And it helps owners of buildings out that may be looking at buildings that once the tax abatement is expired, that building may not be profitable anymore. So it's also going to hopefully maintain those buildings and help those buildings maintain themselves, for lack of a better word.
Yes.
Erica, thank you so much. You are literally the best. And I want to make a quick shout out to Steve Pizicki for introducing us to each other, because if it wasn't for Steve, the three of us wouldn't be sitting here today.
Absolutely. I agree.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Until next time.
So much.